In every democracy, the people's voice is its heartbeat. It is the pulse that keeps freedom alive, echoing through city streets and quiet corners alike. Sometimes that voice is a quiet vote cast in a polling booth. Other times it's a chorus demanding change in the streets, a collective roar that cannot be ignored. Protest is how citizens challenge injustice and demand to be heard. It is a tool for those who feel powerless to reclaim their agency and make their voices resonate. It disrupts the status quo, forcing society to confront uncomfortable truths and sparking conversations that might otherwise be avoided. From civil rights marches to workers' rallies, protest has driven real change. These moments in history remind us that progress is often born from collective action and courage. When people feel their rights are threatened, they unite, carrying signs and chanting for justice. Their determination becomes a force that can shift public opinion and policy. This act of speaking out is a cornerstone of a free society, holding power accountable and reminding leaders that their authority comes from the people. Without protest, democracy risks becoming stagnant, with the few silencing the many. The absence of dissent allows injustice to go unchallenged and voices to fade into silence. Behind every protest is a story, a conviction, and a call to action. Each person who stands up carries a unique reason, a hope for a better future, and a willingness to be heard. It's an invitation to a national conversation about who we are and what we stand for, encouraging dialogue and understanding across differences. And in America, that conversation often centers on one powerful symbol, the flag. It represents not just a nation, but the ongoing struggle for liberty, equality, and justice for all. The American flag is more than cloth. It's a symbol loaded with meaning. For some, it represents sacrifice, hope, and the promise of freedom. Its stars and stripes recall the nation's founding and its ongoing struggle for unity. But the flag's meaning isn't the same for everyone. For many, it's a reminder of both national ideals and the times those ideals have been betrayed. That's why the flag often becomes a focal point for protest. When people feel the nation's principles are under threat, they may use the flag to express dissent. This creates a powerful tension. Protect the symbol or protect the freedom to challenge it. The debate forces us to ask, do we value the symbol of freedom or freedom itself? On August 25, 2025, in Washington, D.C., a city already simmering with political tension, that tension finally erupted into the public eye. Jay Carey, a 42-year-old Army veteran, entered Lafayette Park with a clear and unwavering mission on his mind. After serving his country for 2 decades, Carey understood the flag's meaning on a deeply personal level. To him, it was more than just a symbol. It was a living testament to the freedoms and sacrifices that defined his life. But on that sweltering summer day, he made a controversial choice. Carey set an American flag on fire, not out of hatred or disrespect, but as a deliberate, symbolic act of protest meant to spark a national conversation. His protest was aimed directly at President Donald Trump and a newly enacted policy that Carey believed posed a grave threat to the very foundation of free speech in America. Carey's actions were not impulsive or reckless. He had carefully planned his protest, determined to challenge a law he saw as unconstitutional and to force the nation to confront the limits of dissent. As crowds gathered and news cameras rolled, Carey raised his voice above the noise, calling out the president and labeling him an illegal fascist president. His words echoed through the park, capturing the attention of a divided nation. Within moments, Secret Service agents moved in and detained him, creating a powerful and unsettling image. A decorated veteran being arrested for burning the very flag he once swore to protect. Carey was then handed over to Park Police and formally arrested, setting the stage for a legal and public battle that would soon capture headlines across the country. His act was more than just an act of defiance. It was a direct challenge to the core principles of American democracy, a test of how far the nation would go to protect the rights it claims to cherish. Carey knew the risks he was taking, yet he believed that standing up for free speech, even at great personal cost, was a duty he could not ignore. For Jay Carey, burning the flag was not an act of destruction, but a way to defend the freedoms and ideals that the flag itself represents. It was a painful but necessary statement. Now, as he faced the consequences of his protest, Carey's actions forced the nation to ask itself, what does it truly mean to defend freedom? Setting a fire near the White House is never taken lightly. The area is one of the most heavily guarded and symbolically charged places in the country, where every action is scrutinized and every protest carries extra weight. The sight of smoke rising so close to the seat of executive power immediately draws attention, not just from law enforcement, but from the public and the media as well. Jay Carey was charged with violating a federal park rule against unauthorized fires, a matter of public safety on paper. But the swift and forceful response from federal officers made it clear that this was about more than just enforcing a regulation. The authorities wanted to send a message. Certain acts, especially in this location, would not be tolerated. But everyone knew this was about more than a campfire. The crowd that gathered, the journalists snapping photos, and the tension in the air all pointed to a deeper conflict, one about the meaning of protest and the boundaries of dissent in America. Burning the flag in Lafayette Park, a historic protest site, was a direct challenge to presidential authority. The act was loaded with symbolism, especially given the park's long history as a stage for demonstrations and political statements. After his release, Carey explained his motive. He wanted to test the legality of the president's new executive order. He stood before the cameras, calm but resolute, determined to make his case not just in court, but in the court of public opinion. He argued that no president can make laws by decree, especially those infringing on constitutional rights. For Carey, the executive order was not just a policy, it was a threat to the very foundation of American democracy. For Carey, his military service gave him the standing to make this point. He had served his country, and now he felt called to defend its principles at home, even if it meant risking arrest. He saw himself not as anti-American, but as a defender of its deepest principles. To him, true patriotism meant standing up for the rights and freedoms that define the nation, even when it's unpopular. Quoting the Constitution, he insisted, "No Congress shall make a law infringing on First Amendment rights." He reminded everyone that the right to protest, to speak out, even in ways that offend, is protected by the highest law of the land. To him, burning the flag was an act of patriotism, defending freedoms he'd spent decades protecting. The flames were not meant to destroy, but to illuminate the ongoing struggle for liberty and justice. He was willing to be arrested to prove that even offensive protest is a right worth fighting for. Carey's willingness to face consequences underscored his belief that democracy is not always comfortable, but it must always be protected. His protest was about principle, not destruction. He wanted to spark a conversation, not chaos, and to remind the nation that dissent is a vital part of democracy. The act forced a national conversation about the limits of protest and presidential power. Newsrooms, living rooms, and courtrooms across the country debated what it meant for the future of free expression. Carey's stand was a reminder. Democracy is tested by those willing to challenge it, and its strength is measured by how it responds to those challenges. The spark for Carey's protest was President Trump's executive order banning flag desecration. Trump had long called for harsh penalties for flag burning. Now, he made it official policy. The order directed the Justice Department to prosecute flag desecration, especially if it incited violence or was tied to other crimes. The timing was no accident. Protests were sweeping the nation, and the administration was cracking down. Supporters saw the order as protecting a sacred symbol and honoring the military. Critics called it an unconstitutional attack on free speech, prioritizing a symbol over the freedom it represents. The executive order became a rallying point for both sides. The stage was set for a constitutional showdown. Jay Carey's protest was civil disobedience in action, a direct challenge to the president's authority. He wanted the courts to answer. Can a president outlaw political expression the Supreme Court has protected? Carey's belief was rooted in the Constitution. Congress makes laws, not the president. The First Amendment's protection of free speech, he argued, is absolute for political protest. His status as a veteran complicated the narrative. His protest was about defending liberty, not disrespecting the nation. Carey's arrest set up a legal battle over the very meaning of patriotism and dissent. For him, true patriotism meant defending the principles behind the flag, not just the flag itself. The question, can freedom survive if protest is silenced? The Supreme Court's 1989 Texas v. Johnson decision is clear. Flag burning is protected speech. The court ruled that government cannot ban expression just because it's offensive. This precedent is the law of the land. Neither Congress nor the president can override it. President Trump's executive order tried to sidestep this by focusing on exceptions like incitement or violence. The administration's strategy prosecute flag burning when tied to other crimes, not as pure speech. Critics argue this is a backdoor attempt to chill dissent, using minor infractions as pretexts for arrest. If protesters fear prosecution for any infraction, free speech is threatened. The conflict: protect the flag or protect the right to challenge it. The outcome will shape the boundaries of protest in America. The stakes: the health of democracy itself. Jay Carey's arrest was part of a broader federal crackdown on protest in D.C. Attorney General Pam Bondi praised the arrest, linking it to a campaign to restore order. Dozens of others were arrested for flag burning that day as part of a sweeping operation. Over 1,000 arrests had been made since the crackdown began, with weapons seized and tensions high. The administration framed these actions as necessary for public safety, painting protests as dangerous. This narrative justified forceful responses and blurred the line between political speech and criminality. The strategy: defend the flag symbolically, while suppressing dissent on the ground. Protesters now faced not just legal complexity, but real risk in an environment of heightened enforcement. Jay Carey's story brings us to the heart of democracy's contradictions. What does it mean to be patriotic, unquestioning loyalty to a symbol, or fierce defense of liberty? Protests are democracy's lifeblood, proof that citizens are engaged and vigilant. Acts of defiance force society to re-examine its values and keep government accountable. The tension between honoring the flag and protecting protest will never fully disappear. America's identity is shaped by those willing to challenge authority and demand justice. These conflicts are not signs of weakness, but of a democracy still alive and evolving. Freedom is messy, uncomfortable, and sometimes offensive, but it is essential. The fire Carey lit was more than protest. It was a symbol of the enduring spirit of dissent. In the end, no symbol is more sacred than the rights it represents.